everybody. Welcome to our September office hours. We are very happy to have you here. We run these sessions every month to answer your questions, to maybe point out a few new features, to discuss any questions you have and help you figure out any problems, whether they're pedagogical or technical, and maybe point out some new features as well. Should we just go ahead and introduce ourselves, Brian? All right, I'll let you start with that.
Okay. I'm Brian Verdine. I'm our VP of Academic Product Engagement. My background is primarily in the academic world. I got my PhD from Vanderbilt in psychology, and then did a postdoc at the University of Delaware in the education department. I started dabbling in ed tech and started with Yellowdig about 3 years ago to basically do research into the platform and communicate with our instructors, getting feedback from them and also helping them get better outcomes. So a session like this, I think is kind of right up my alley. If anybody asks any questions, I can answer with data. I'll pull up some slides and things that I have, but really looking forward to helping you guys get the most out of it.
All right, I'm Bob Erdischek. I'm Yellowdig's Senior Academic Liaison, and I've been in higher education for, over 20 years, one way or another. And a little after the turn of the century, I was working, after having done some teaching, I was working as an instructional technologist, faculty developer, helping instructors choose technology and implement it, and design courses, whether it was fully distant learning or some hybrid mode even back then. And I really loved the promise of online learning, but I didn't think that the tools or the pedagogy provided that learning community or the ability to surface those quieter students in the way that I was looking for. So I went on to teach political science for over a decade after that, and tried tools outside of the LMSs to build engagement beyond my classroom time. And then I found Yellowdig, and it really sort of checked all the boxes of what I was trying to do and build student engagement and create more of a learning opportunity, the opportunity to go peer-to-peer and to really get all students involved in the conversation. And now I work with our partners to help support them, best practices, pedagogy, anything we can do to make your experience with Yellowdig successful. All right. You want to move forward, Brian?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to get to the questions. By the way, just to fully clarify, we did receive a number of questions in advance, and so we're going to go through them. And when we can find the appropriate time, we will answer the ones that are in the Q&A, but rest assured we will get to them. Let's go.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask us sort of the easiest place to get help and answers to their questions. And aside from a session like this, help.yellowdig.co is definitely a great place to go and look. And you can visit that as just a website. Or if you're inside of the platform, we've added a widget as a help button here at the bottom left. And we can see that once we're inside. But we definitely recommend sort of searching our knowledge base. Real former instructors worked on it, not our engineers. So it's hopefully pretty human readable and helpful from a sort of instructor or student perspective. And we're pretty proud of that. So that's a great place to go if you're looking for information. One of the other things that we have is our Learn platform. And there are a couple of different courses within that platform that you can take. Our most popular one is the instructor certification course. And if you haven't taken that, whether you're a longtime user of Yellowdig or not, we've heard that it's been pretty helpful. And it really only takes an hour. We call it a course, but it's only an hour. Very video heavy. And we've heard good feedback both from new users and old users. So definitely recommend checking that out.
All right, let's go on. Yeah. So also, this isn't your only opportunity to talk with us. If you have any questions about your particular course, or want to brainstorm a little bit around how to get more engagement, or certain types of conversations, feel free to give me a shout at bob@yellowdig.com. And as Brian just mentioned, the learn.yellowdig.co. This link here that you're looking at is directly to the 1 hour instructor certification course. So if you want to use the fancy QR code, you can do that. And by the way, I believe that this session will be sent out to those who've registered. The recording will be sent out after it's processed and complete, my understanding. Additional support, if you have a technical issue with the platform, or if your students do, for you, send an email to support@yellowdig.com, or click the little button in that help widget that Brian shared a minute ago, that has, and we'll show in the platform where that is. And have your students directly reach out to support@yellowdig.com if they have problems, rather than being the intermediary. Would you suggest that, Brian?
Yeah, typically a lot of student sort of access problems are easiest solved by individual interaction with the student, because most of those problems are specific to their technology or browser settings or something like that. Obviously, if a whole bunch of your students are having some kind of trouble, that may be a different issue. But if it's just a couple of students that are having access problems, it's usually faster just to have them contact us directly, and we'll help them out individually.
And then we've already covered the knowledge base, the monthly office hours. You're obviously here, but if you find you need to come to another one, this link will allow you to sign up for whichever one you want until the end of the year, and then obviously we'll repopulate that. You can also share that with your peers. And finally, the Yellowdig Instructor Support Community, the YISC. This link here will allow you to join this Yellowdig community of instructors and instructional designers who share their thoughts on Yellowdig best practices, ask questions, and so forth. We're also in there answering these questions. All right, let's get into it, shall we?
So, for anybody that may have heard some of our spiel before, please forgive us for taking just a couple of seconds to talk out these two slides. And the reason is, I think a lot of times as we're answering questions about the platform, and we're talking about different features in the platform, we're sort of approaching it with a framework in mind. And this slide sort of illustrates what we've seen as the typical social assignment framework, which is the instructor creates some kind of assignment to create a response to a discussion prompt, or a video, or a poem, and then students are told to interact with each other's content and talk about it, right? So that's a very sort of typical framework for a social assignment. And as we were conceptualizing Yellowdig and doing various early tests on the platform, what we found was that this framework changes the way that students think about their job, and also has some really specific problems associated with it that actually end up hurting conversation. So just really quickly, some of those things are, first of all, when the instructor is sort of prompting students to do something every week, they become the audience for that material rather than other students. And if the students are going to talk about it, they really need to think of each other as the audience for those things. One of the other problems is, by having a weekly deadline, you also start a new topic or a new conversation sort of every week. And each of those starts is a cold start. The first student that comes in is answering the instructor, but they don't have anybody to talk to, and they don't have anything to respond to. So they actually learn to procrastinate more and more throughout the semester. And in a lot of cases, by the end, all of the students are sort of coming in right at the end of a week to do their assignment, because there's no sense showing up earlier. One of the other problems with this framework is that the last student in, or the last couple of students in, are responding to the instructor, they're responding to a couple of other students, but nobody is ever reading and responding to them. So they're not really having a social experience at all. And it's really, you can't really argue that because they're not actually interacting with anybody. Um, and so, that's a clear problem with that framework. And if that student continues to procrastinate throughout the semester, they really won't be socially interacting with anyone. Um, and I don't know if there's anything you want to add quick to that, Bob, before we.
I think that you pretty much covered it. I mean, basically, students view this as a weekly assignment and plan their lives accordingly, and that leads to procrastination. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah. So this is our Yellowdig paradigm, and a few things of note. We encourage building an actual learning community where students learn from each other and share with each other, bring in relevant experiences from outside of the course related to the course, their own personal experiences, what's going on in the real world. And these conversations, those dots and dashes, indicate that these conversations can ebb and flow based on what's important or relevant to students at any particular time during the course. And this can be also helpful for the instructor to inform teaching, so you know where your students are. And one other little quick thing of note here is that as you can see by the little icons in the front, not every single conversation needs to be led by the instructor. When the conversations are led by the instructor, students are going to focus only on pleasing the instructor and really won't have that opportunity to focus on maybe what the questions they have are, or what they find important or interesting related to the topic. And conversations are less than they can be. Let's go. Anything else you want to add to that, Brian? I know I was quick.
No.
All right, let's get to questions and answers and stuff. All right, so by the way, I was reading through the Q&A questions, and Tali, a couple of the questions that we're going to cover, the setting up topics and some of the questions about points, I think will help you with your question. But if not, let us know and we'll come back to it. So we're going to talk about, as you can see, setting up topics, being able to find what you're looking for in Yellowdig, adding additional points, how you would do that beyond the points that are assigned for posts and comments, or even subtracting them if you felt the need to do that, and how to check on student progress. Are we going to talk about some of that, Brian?
Yeah, some of that we probably will as we run out of questions. So I'm going to jump out of this now and go into the platform, and we'll start talking.
So, Tali, I know your question wasn't first, but that was our first question that we received about setting up topics and leveraging topics for creating better conversations in the Yellowdig community. And you may or may not know that topics in Yellowdig, by default in our newer communities, are required. In other words, when a student creates a post, they can, or frankly, when anyone creates a post in Yellowdig, they cannot complete the posting process until they choose one of these topics. And what these topics do is it forces students to stay closer to the course content, closer to those concepts. It makes it easier to find those conversations. And it allows you as the instructor to track how they're engaging on those conversations. But what I want to say before we go any further is these topics are meant to be expressive and to define the conversations that you want students to have, right? So in Yellowdig, there are a few topics that are set by default, and you can keep or delete those, but I would absolutely add topics to that list. Don't just keep them as they are. Add things that are related to your top level syllabus subject matter, or another way of thinking about them is add topics that describe the conversations you want students to have. What are those things that you want to have reemerge through the course as you're going on? And creating topics is super easy. You go to add a new topic and type it in, and hopefully your fingers end up on the right keys. And click submit. There you go, new topic. Oh, what I wanted to say, and I don't know if I said this a minute ago, is don't name your topics week 1 or module 2 or anything like that, because that's not going to create that conversation. That's just going to refer to that particular week, and nobody's going to remember what week 2 was in week 3 or week 7 or something like that. And these topics really allow these conversations to ebb and flow and to reemerge when they become important again. The other thing about the topics, I just want to demonstrate that they're filters, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah. So topics are filters. This is how you can find those conversations easily. When Brian clicked on that little topic link, it made it so that the feed is only going to show those posts and comments under that particular topic, making it easier to see, to find new conversations, to make sure that what you're posting as a student isn't going to be redundant, because you'll be able to see the other conversations that are going on with that already. It also makes the student think a little bit more about what they're bringing into the community and where it belongs. One of the things that we talk about a lot is having instructors model the type of behavior that they want to see from students. And when it comes to creating better course relevant conversations, topics are a large part of it. Certainly not the only part of it, but a large part of it. Creating well thought out topics that students must use to go along with the things that they're posting and commenting. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions was definitely about finding things, and we can get into more detail on that. But just so you know, most of the things in our interface can actually be clicked on and used as filters. So you can click on accolades, you can click on hashtags, and those will automatically sort of filter the feed, and you'll see those filters activated here. It's worthwhile knowing that each of the filtered groups here can be added on top of each other with, as sort of like an and statement. So if I want to find a post by a specific member on a specific topic, I can use those in tandem with one another. And I don't know if there are any by Kyle Student, but this would be an example of me finding,
Hey,
uh, a contribution by Kyle Student on the topic entrepreneurship.
and you could go deeper and add a date range if that was going to be helpful to what you were looking for. So that really segues nicely into our next question, is finding what you're looking for in Yellowdig. Before that, Talia, I'd just like to hopefully that was a good start at answering your question. There are probably a few other things that we're going to be saying about that, but feel free to post another question if we don't get to exactly what you need.
Maybe because of Talia's question, I would just point out a couple more things in as regards to the topic before we move on from that. So within the topics, first of all, we did make them so they can be reorganized, right? So, if you want to encourage students to be able to easily find a specific topic on a specific week, you could move that to the top of the topic selector. Or maybe you have some other strategy for how you would want to arrange your topics. But a couple of other things that you can do is enable and disable topics. And typically, once you use a topic and people have started using them, we wouldn't recommend deleting them. We would recommend just disabling them. The reason is we collect data about the topics that we surface to you in another part of the platform. And it would delete that data. It would also remove the topic tags from any post that had it affixed if you remove the topic tag. So if you disable them, it just makes it so students can't create new posts with that topic. So doing that are a couple of ways that you might be able to nudge students towards, answering specific topics, or only displaying specific topics.
All right, and again, the modeling of the behavior that you want to see. There are topics are just one of the tools that you can use for that, and the accolades. Actually posting and commenting to some degree can help with that as well. And we'll get into that a little bit more. All right. Let's get back to finding what you're looking for in Yellowdig. You know, Brian, let's suppose I wanted to find a particular post. I don't remember who did it. I don't remember what topic it was on, but I remember that it asked something about a logo. What might I do?
Yeah, I mean, we've built out a search experience that is meant to be really helpful in finding specific content. And there's a few things that people sometimes miss about it, or should definitely know in using it. Um, First of all, we'll do a full text search of the top of the high level post titles as well as the body. We're highlighting if you're looking for a specific word. If you were to choose, a student's name, you can also find them that way and be able to search posts by specific users. So um, this search interface is really helpful in a lot of ways. You can also see with the way that this works and with the data store, you get the ability to specifically search by post or comment. So if I wanted to only see, comments with the word Paul in them, I can do that. And I can see anywhere that somebody is sort of mentioning Paul Professor here in this. But if I wanted to then jump into that comment, this is a permalink. It will open to that specific comment by that specific student. So a lot of people sort of maybe are not taking as much advantage of the search filter of the searching capabilities as humanly possible. And maybe one sort of hack around this is if you're not looking for a word or you don't even know what word you're looking for, but you did want to just search by posts or comments, you can just put in a space, and you'll be able to easily find any comments. So if you can think of anything to put in that search, including a space, you'll be able to sort of round down the search criterion.
And don't forget that the filtering that we showed also is really flexible and should get you where you're going as well. Brian, while we're on this page, what is that little envelope thing happening there next on the top right of it? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. So in Yellowdig, there's kind of two notions of read and viewed, right? So for our notion of read in the filters here, if you click on this and mark it as read, it'll show the envelope as open. It will collapse the post. That's a good way as you're going through. If you sort of feel like you need to exhaustively read the board, or there's things that you definitely want to mark as read, um, you can mark them and be able to filter for them uh, using the red status here. Um, just because some people don't realize it, there is also a notion of posts being viewed, and you'll see this in some of your data. Um, but for every post, uh, there is this little icon here that says whether you've personally viewed this post or not. And what we're keying on is whether the post was in the center of the screen for the person for more than about 5 seconds. So when you're seeing post views in the platform in any of the data reports, it means that a student saw that post when it's counted. It means a student saw that post on their screen for 5 seconds and had it set there. And then in order to get more post views, they would have to scroll to another post, have it be focused, have it counted as a view.
And just to go just a step further, one thing that we don't talk about very often, but if you're looking to see what's brand new in the community, you can either sort by showing what are the recent posts. That'll show the most recent posts in the community. Active posts will show the most engaged posts, whether they're older or newer. And there's the activity feed on the left, which can show you exactly in chronological order what has happened in the community. So we're just hoping to help you find what you're looking for a little bit easier. Hopefully some of these ideas will assist with that. All right, let's move on because we got a lot to cover in a little bit of time. And so let's suppose, Brian, that you had a student who, or you were encouraging students to create videos, maybe to do foreign language, show some speaking or something like that. All right. If they're not typing that minimum word count, they're not going to get their Yellowdig points for that. Is there any way that we can help them out with that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I think that you could do. The first that we would probably talk about is awarding accolades, right? So the accolades on posts and comments can be configured to say whatever you want and award however many points that you want, right? So um, we definitely have talked about adding different multimedia items being attached to the post as new point rules, and we're exploring the possibility of doing that. Um, but for now, you could very easily create a accolade for a video and award, an accolade if a student created a video in a post or something like that.
And you could have
Um,
it the point value be equivalent to a written uh, post point value or written comment point value. You could also add more than one video accolade to a post or comment, which might be useful in this case if there is somebody who does a video and you want them to get the points, but you also want to point out that this particular video is the kind of video that you want students to be creating. So adding two accolades is not a crazy thing to do necessarily.
and where you add those once they're created is right here in the accolade button at the bottom of any post and comment, right? So should be really easy to award those, and you just set those up in settings accolades um, right there. So that's one thing that we would recommend, and we would definitely recommend using accolades just in general. And there's different ways that we think about the guideline, but I would typically recommend using them on something around like 5 to 10% of posts. It makes them rare enough that students will try to get them, uh, but still frequent enough that they'll try to get them. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, just one caveat to that. Posts and comments. One thing about
Yes.
accolades is you can award them not only to posts, but to comments. And comments are so valuable in Yellowdig. They keep conversations going. Did you also point out the point manage points button?
Yeah, and since that was one of the how do you sort of add additional points? One thing that you can do, and you could take them away, I guess, as well. But for any post or comment, you can add a point value or subtract one and give a reason why you've modified it. So this only the student that you do it for will see these, and know that you added or subtracted points. The accolades are public acknowledgement. So one good reason to have those as a public acknowledgement is other students will sort of model their behavior off of what students are doing that are getting badges from you, that are getting those accolades, right? So uh, we definitely, in general, recommend using accolades for sort of like the public acknowledgement factor of them, in order to help change other students' behavior.
So Brian, if I award an accolade to a student for a post or a comment, right? Is that going to push that student over the weekly max potentially that they can earn that week?
Yeah. So when an instructor modifies points with the accolades, or modifies points by adding points, those are in addition to their max. So they'll still be able to get that much farther over uh, the max for that week. And the reason we do that is obviously if a student has already hit their max and you give them an accolade for work that they did, they still deserve to earn those points. They still were you know recognized and should get them. And I think maybe some of this answers Nicole's questions around computing grades and retroactively answering questions and whether it gives them points. So I think I'm going to try to dig into that a little bit right now, and try to answer that. And I think, Nicole, we've had some interactions around points. So hopefully this hits on some of the things that I know from some of your other questions. Um, uh, the points earned in Yellowdig are cumulative for the entire uh, semester or whatever, right? So you set a weekly uh, target that you want students to have to earn each week, and then we compute a semester long a number of points that they have to get, which we'll show here as the total goal. And in this course, that's 8,000 points. Go ahead,
And
Bob.
I just want to add that, when we think of Yellowdig, we think of it as a single assignment over the course of the entire term, as opposed to anything weekly.
Yeah, and a lot of the reasons for that are what we talked about in that sort of concept of community versus an assignment, right? If students think of Yellowdig as a weekly assignment, they come in right before the deadline and they check the box on that assignment. If they think of this as something they should be engaging in more regularly all throughout the semester, um, they will come in when they have interesting things to share. They'll come in when they have things to talk about, questions to ask, and they're more likely to participate thoughtfully, and they're more likely to come back more often and actually read the things that are posted. So all of those are reasons why we conceptualized Yellowdig as a single semester long assignment. And we put in the concept of a weekly maximum so that students just have to spread out their participation throughout the course, right? So we limit them to earning a certain number of points just so they can't come in the last week of the semester and get all of their participation points, because if they did that, they wouldn't really be interacting with students either. They wouldn't be interacting with the other people. So we put in that maximum and a weekly reset of that maximum only to spread participation out throughout the course. And I think one thing I like to show people that I think helps both them and students understand what this framework looks like is the points over time graph, right? So unfortunately, this is a demo account, and this student does not have a lot of points. They've fallen very far behind. But the course long goal for this course is 8,000. And if the student achieves those 8,000 points at the end of the semester, their grade will be 100%, and they will be getting all of their Yellowdig points. The period targets that we put in and that we pass the grade back against throughout the semester is just an indication of whether that student is on pace to get to 100%. So if they're earning their points and this yellow line that shows the student's point earning is above this line of blue dots, it means they're on pace to get to the points at the end. And so the grades in Yellowdig are computed off of this notion of pace and whether students are on pace to achieve the end goal. And this graph, I think, is really helpful as students are going. Basically, if they're above the line, they could coast for a little bit and probably not fall behind. If they're below the line, they need to speed up a little bit, earn some more points over the coming days, and they'll be exactly where they need to be.
Brian, a couple other things. If you scroll down a little bit on that page, you'll see the points log, and this is what students would be able to see in the points log. And again, this is a demo community with very little happening, but in your own courses, what you will see is each and every activity that a student does, they will be able to see it in their point log related to when they earned it and whether they earned points for it or not, and what the how they earned those points, whether it was a post, a comment, an accolade, what have you, and with links to those posts and comments as well. So there should never be a question, as long as students know that this exists, as to whether they got points for anything in particular. You have a similar view for this. In fact, it was a question that somebody asked in our submitted the questions, and that would be in the point report. So the point report is available to you. It's not available to students because they have no business seeing each other's points. But this point report can show you at a glance exactly where each and every student is in terms of earning their total points over the course of the total Yellowdig assignment. And then if you felt the need to dive in deeper in any particular case, and I would click on Olivia's student here, the show log will give you that same view that students have as to, for that particular student, what exactly that they've earned and how. And this should really help eliminate any confusion between you and the student versus over any kinds of points that you have. A couple other things that you can do here in the point report, Brian, if we go back to that, is download there are several CSVs that you can download and manipulate. The points overview report is a short report that, if I can remember correctly, has points, total, comments, and when those points are earned.
Yeah, the download points report has more
much
more specific of like when each activity happened. It's a little bit more like the log.
And Nicole, I don't know whether or not you need that information, but you might be able to find, if I'm understanding your question correctly. In all of these, you can always see the date or time that anything was particularly awarded by going here.
Yeah, and maybe to answer Nicole's question about students still getting points, right? Points are awarded and tracked at the time that they're earned in our system. And that's partially because, you know, we aren't truly like bucketing points by week, right? So we don't think of these as like a weekly assignment where students have to fill each bucket. They basically have to fill one large bucket throughout the course, right? So, you know, within our system, it was architected around the idea that you know students are coming back regularly, earning points as people are interacting with their content, and they get those points as the semester progresses. So that's one reason that we don't bucket the points by weeks, but it does mean that as long as the student is not at their weekly maximum, they can always earn more points, right? So, you know, one thing that I think is helpful for people to know is that this maximum shows differently for each student based on where they started a given, you know, how many points they had when they started a given period, and they can always get from this number to this number in the period they currently are. So if they understand nothing else about the point system, it's really easy to just know if they come into Yellowdig, they're starting here for the week, and they're, you know, or wherever they're starting there, and they can earn up to there at the time that they're seeing these two numbers.
In addition to that, that area that Brian is pointing to is what we call the Yellowdig point modal. And this is the point of truth that students can always go to find out exactly where they are. In fact, we would encourage you to probably point them there rather than to the Canvas gradebook or the LMS gradebook, as the assignment isn't complete until the end of the term. So you may have less confusion on your hands if you direct them to the true point of truth right here in the Yellowdig point modal. All right, moving along, we're going to some questions now in the Q&A. And Rich asks two questions, and I think we should answer the second one first because it's important. Sam is fine. Sam is great. Dr. Samuel Kampa, our client success lead and data analyst. He's great. He's doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes, and we will send him your regards if you'd like, Rich. And now that second question, the second question looks like a technical issue, and you know, my initial thought is that this is the type of question we were referring to before, where the student should reach right out to support at yellowdig.com to have our team work with that student directly to address and resolve the problem.
Yeah, what I can tell you quickly, Rich, is that I haven't heard an issue reported like this that would indicate that it would be like a platform level issue. Um, so definitely, if you can get any more information or put that student in contact with us, we'll take a look at it.
Right. And just to clarify, I'm not sure if we totally answered Nicole's question. The students go back and, I mean, I know you did that. Basically, they get points when they do that action.
I
So,
think the accommodations question definitely comes up, and we have a couple of different answers for that. First of all, you can adjust student points uh, in that point report area. So you can give students points for any reason or no reason. I mean, you can do whatever you like to the student point earnings and adjust them. Um, the one thing we do say a little bit about sort of accommodations for students is because Yellowdig is a semester long assignment, there's not really a concept of them like missing deadlines or catching up from missing an assignment. And what we typically recommend, and honestly, we recommend this for all students, but within the point system, there is an
I just want to point out, Barry, this is going to be the answer to your question as well.
okay.
Right.
So within the point system, there is a notion of a buffer. And so when you're setting up the points some of this may be new to some of you. We just released it recently. It will only show up for new communities. Um, but but when you're selecting the point system setup, you would set a target per week, per period that you want students to earn, and then that multiplies by the number of weeks in your course to create a sort of total point target. There's this notion of a buffer here, and it's set for 40%. And we used to recommend actually a lower buffer. We've been looking at our data and seeing that increasing it definitely helps improve engagement and sort of all of the indicators of overall quality within the community. So we've been like slowly turning this up as we check our data, but we would now recommend it be somewhere around 40%, which means that students each week in this specific course would be able to earn up to 1,400 points of the total 8,000. And if you just think about some quick math, that means that students can earn quite a bit ahead each week. And if they were to earn ahead for a couple of weeks, they would be able to easily take an entire week off.
or or the opposite, where if they have not earned earlier towards the end or the middle, they can increase their output and make up some of those points. The idea here is flexibility is built in. We know students have busy lives. We know things occur. Students get sick or what have you. Hopefully not get sick. And so the buffer is designed to allow them to complete the entire assignment by the end of the term. But to some degree, using what the time that they budgeting their time the way they want to do it, and talking about the concepts that they feel like they need to talk about.
Yep. And you can easily increase that buffer all the way up to 100%. So you're able to make it so that students really can earn a lot of their points, with significantly less participation. Now, the one thing I guess I would think about a little bit is, if students are required to come here fairly frequently, they have the opportunity to have real back and forth conversations, right? So again, the what students often want to do is probably sit down and do all of an assignment in one kind of shot. But in terms of actually getting students to interact with one another, we would rather them come to Yellowdig, for 5 minutes 3 times a week than to come for 1 hour, because they won't have as many interactions if they're only coming once a week.
And to go along with that, let me just reiterate that what we're looking for in Yellowdig is to build a community of real conversations, not just people posting, We want to allow people to get their points by commenting, to get their points through social points by having comments that they get from other students, to create real conversations here. And that can't really be done when students view it as a weekly assignment. The mindset of the point system is designed to end that cycle of procrastination, and to create not only students going in earlier in those earning periods, but also creating better content because they know they can get points from others if they do.
One thing I wanted to highlight as a new change to this is once your community starts, we shift this interface a little bit. And one thing I want to highlight for everybody, because a lot of people don't realize this about the Yellowdig point system, is that as the semester is going, you are able to edit the point earning rules for any reason, and they only apply going forward. So maybe this helps answer some of the video question earlier as well about, if I want to give students points for posting a video without the word count, what can I do? Well, for a specific week, maybe you just delete the word count. Maybe you just remove the word count. Then if a student creates a post with a video, they'll automatically get the points for the post. Although I will say, like, a lot of times it's good to have students put a little snippet of what they're doing in the video anyway. And we do recommend keeping these minimum word counts pretty small. The biggest reason is because, there's like a notion of TLDR, too long, didn't read. But as you increase these minimum word counts, students are less likely to read the posts. And it's actually the reading, the thinking about it, and then the talking about those posts that drive most of the learning. So for a lot of reasons, we don't recommend jacking up the word counts very much higher than this. And we've recently done some sort of machine learning on different point setups, and it sort of reconfirmed those suggestions in terms of what's driving the most content consumption and posting in our communities.
Going back, Nicole's final question that is right in the Q&A right now. Hopefully, the discussion of the buffer created an understanding that that's basically what we're talking about here. If something is going to run, if a student's lack of participation is going to run outside of the time, from the beginning of the start date of the Yellowdig community to the end date of the Yellowdig community, then it would be like any kind of incomplete grade where you can go back and add a separate gradebook column or something like that for that student, as you're sort of suggesting, or adjust in any way you can.
Anyway. Yeah, a couple of things to just think about on sort of adjusting student points is that the way that our grade sync and grade column works is, we override grades as they change, and we fill them in until after the point end date, right? So if you are going to make manual adjustments to our grade column, you should wait until after the point end date has lapsed and they're not syncing any longer. Or one other option is to copy our grade column to fix it, and then actually just share the copied version rather than our one that syncs. And some people like to do that if they want to sort of like update Yellowdig grades at something that is, not our sort of regular once an hour pace, right? So some people will hide the grade column in their learning management system and then kind of reveal it whenever they feel comfortable. And we actually encourage that in a lot of ways because at the end of the day, Yellowdig's system, has a couple of different ways to communicate where students are within the course progress. And in most cases, if students pay attention to what's in Yellowdig, they can find one of a few things to latch onto, from sort of the verbal descriptions of how many more points they can get, to some of these other kinds of visualizations that will allow them to know where they are. And one thing I just want to quickly show is that students are able to time travel, to see where these what this meter would look like in different periods. So they can get a sense for how these things have changed over time until the current version. And maybe from that standpoint, where we were in the report, if you're looking at a student's log, you're also able to view their participation page as they are seeing it. So this is Olivia student's participation page with their point earning over time, and that gives you a chance to see what some of that looks like.
All right, we have a few minutes left, and we're absolutely happy to take more questions. I did want to point out, I'm going to share my screen just for a minute, Brian.
Yeah, no problem.
That if I can make this work here, that we have several upcoming office hours. Next one is Monday at noon on October 18th. Feel free to submit your questions in advance. These were good questions that you all had today, and hope we effectively answered them for you. And you can sign up there. And again, that URL is whatis.yellowdig.co/office-hours. And then the other thing that is coming up next Thursday, if I can click on it, is a webinar, Practical Tips for Faculty Presence in Any Modality. And basically this is, we did a similar webinar, a starting point on this webinar last month. Myself and our learning, our Senior Vice President of Learning Design and Product, Natalie Murray, who has a great background, will be talking about faculty development. Actually, we'll be asking you to talk about faculty presence and sharing tips and ideas, and really going for a practical conversation on faculty presence or what's required, what do students need. And we hope you'll be able to sign up for that. Oh, looks like we got another Q&A, another question. Okay.
She's just saying thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Courtney. Thank you.
Since we have a few more minutes, there's one question that I think it was Tali asked that I want to hit on just a little bit, because sometimes questions come up around like, how do I focus students, and we went through the topics, and certainly students having to think about how their post fits into a topic can definitely help with that. But we also hear people sort of, maybe they have a specific discussion prompt that they really liked from, their Blackboard discussions or something that they're thinking about how to do it in Yellowdig. I think, one thing that we see is if students conceptualize an assignment, they tend not to participate in it really thoughtfully as much, and you get some of those deadline issues. So I think like one easy answer around how to bring some of those more focused conversations in is possibly to use a similar framework, but make participating in those conversations one option that students can exercise, and make it feel like a helping hand for something to think about discussing, rather than you have to talk about this. So what I mean by that is for this week, if you're not if you can't come up with another post or a question that you really want to ask, or you don't run into something in the news that you think is really interesting and will be relevant to the course, think about possibly talking about this, right? And to give it as one option of many ways to use the community. And what you'll see is some students like that. They appreciate the helping hand. They'll gladly talk about those things. And other students will still contribute really meaningful stuff other than that. And what ends up happening is students actually end up reading much more of it because there's more interesting, varied content there. And so they actually consume much more of that.
And just to go a step further, first of all, not every student has to post. There are, you can get your points for commenting. In fact, if everyone was posting, there'd be no conversations. It would just be people posting. So we want to create those conversations. So make sure that students are aware that they can achieve their point goals that way. We encourage you to award more points per word, at least as many points per word for comments as we do for posts. And another thing is sort of you as the instructor, at the outset of the Yellowdig community, setting the expectations for what kind of conversations you want to have and explicitly telling them that, the purpose of this Yellowdig community is to learn from each other, to share those experiences that we're having or those things that are happening in the world that are related to the course concepts we're talking, to ask and answer each other's questions, and to really have discussions that help us learn from each other. And if you tell them that in advance, maybe even at the outset of your community, post the kind of content that you're looking for, and then also award those accolades initially as you're seeing those types of things come through. That's going to help put students on the right track. Share your passion for the subject matter when you're in your Yellowdig community. Occasionally comment on those conversations that you would like to see expand. Maybe there's a conversation that you think is a great conversation, is what you want to see, but maybe students haven't really started to engage on that. That's your opportunity to extend that particular conversation and encourage other conversations like that.
Yeah, I was looking for the one post by the professor, but one of the things that we see is, if professors are just saying, great post, a lot of times that will actually shut down the conversation because students think like, okay, like that conversation is done. If you want to extend those conversations, ask questions, share another resource that might get more conversation going. Oh, here it is right here. Don't just say, great post, share another article, ask another question. And that really helps people, extend that conversation. And I was showing the conversation ratio there in the data, but a typical discussion board is 2 comments for every post because you tell students post once, comment twice. We actually find in our platform that engagement and students participating voluntarily beyond the point system are all peak or don't peak until at least 8 comments per post. So students actually having conversations is where a lot of the learning, interest, engagement is happening. And you don't need a lot of posts in order to have really good conversation.
All right. So we're at the end of the hour, and a lot of people have had to take off to other meetings. Zia, Barry, and Tali, thank you very much for joining us today. If you have any last questions, please enter them now. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Barry.
Yep.
And I guess that's that. All right. Thanks, everybody.